welcome once again. We're going to see the Intel Extreme Masters.
SK Lin, more sports.
The legacy of Fnatic, we're always a winning machine.
Now we will win the Intel Extreme Masters Season 4.
If I can have my name on that trophy, it'll be so good.
Oh my god, I cannot believe that this is actually happening.
I'm so proud of my team, how we are able to stick together.
The atmosphere is really great and we're extremely proud.
A dream for every gamer in the world.
So an amazing evolution there. You saw 12 years pass by. If I can move this slide out. There we go. Quick introduction from... Oh dear. A quick introduction from us. So I'm James Dean. I'm the Managing Director of ESL UK, which has been in existence since 2012.
Cool. Yeah, so my name's Mark Green. I'm the Consumer Client Marketing Manager for the UK, for Intel, for the UK. So it's my job really to execute the global Intel gaming and esports strategy, working with a lot of our partners, including obviously ESL, but also leveraging some of our other esports investments like Overwatch and quite recently the NBA 2K stuff. So, James invited us...
Closer.
Are we sat too close?
Go close.
All right. Obviously, I'm a natural at this. But yeah, no, James invited us up to really have a conversation about some of the stuff that we've done together over the years at a global level as well as a local level, as well as, look at some of the stuff that we're going to work on and some of the stuff we're going to be doing in the future. So I think James is going to give you a bit of a history lesson.
Yeah, so esports isn't around. In fact, actually, sometimes we start this presentation by showing a picture from 1981 of a Space Invaders tournament in New York for $50,000. But from ESL's perspective, the group behind ESL actually started to work together in 1997. They were basically joining up, as we heard with the panel before, as a community and starting LAN parties. And they created something called Deutsche Clanliga, and eventually founded ESL in 2000. In 2002, they actually launched the national competition, which today stands as the longest pro-level tournament in esports history. And at the same time, with the help of Intel, of course, that's where the partnership started. So I think ESL still stands today officially as the longest running ever digital marketing campaign of Intel in history, which is quite cool, and maybe the longest forever. And then European expansion started, then the US and Asia, and finally we were then acquired by a company called MTG, which is Modern Times Group based in Sweden. They're actually traditionally a media rights agency for the sporting industry. They made their name in ice hockey, and they also bought our sister company now, DreamHack, in its entirety. So they actually have an amazing portfolio in esports, and they've been looking after us fairly well. And of course, last year we were extremely excited to actually announce a global partnership between Intel and ESL, just to really continue to develop that long-term strategy together on how we can help the esports community grow.
So James actually sent me a video, which is actually in the presentation, but I think we'll skip it. But a couple of days back, and I started watching it, and I thought, that's got to be at least 20 years old, because they're all playing on like beige PCs, big CRT monitors, really small room. And I showed one of our interns as well, and he was like, "What, people actually gamed on those systems?" I was like, "Yeah." So I asked James, like, when was it? I was like, it's got to be at least 20 years old. He's like, nah, 2006. I was like, what? Really? And so we started looking at what else happened at 2006. And incidentally, this is a picture of the first Intel Extreme Masters in 2006 in CeBIT. So we then looked at, well, what's happened since then? So over a course of 10 years, I think we've ran around 9 seasons. The following 10 years, we ran 9 seasons, over 10 different titles. I think we travelled to around 25 different cities, so we took it global as well. And I think we gave out around about $5 million worth of prize funds as well. So, just in a space of 10 years, you can just quickly see how much it's grown. And then obviously this year, back in March, we had the finals for season 11, and I think, James, you've got some insights into this.
Yeah, absolutely. The growth, this is a picture of Katowice. So IEM as a central event, although it's obviously travelling the world, this became rapidly known as the biggest esports event in the industry. And it's based in this small mining town, or it's not small in Poland, but a relatively small town in Poland called Katowice, known for very little else apart from coal mining. And this event was created, and the amazing thing is that year on year it's continued to grow. It grew another 38% in season 11, over 50 million 46 million views online. 176,000 people came to this event over 2 weekends, which was a 53% growth from the year before. So the actual growth and an 80% increase in social media, which was quite interesting as well. So actually to see that continuing on is incredible. And we're wondering actually when that will plateau, and we're not sure when that will ever happen.
So obviously you just said about the growth. So we were quite fortunate last year. Intel became a official technology partner of the Olympics. So we wanted to continue amplifying the growth of the esports and bring it to a platform where maybe a different type of audience would be able to see it. So we brought our Intel Extreme Masters concept, or tournament I should say, to the Winter Olympics. It wasn't a medalling sport, but we took a StarCraft 2 tournament. But we wanted to make sure that it was open globally, open to anyone. So via online qualifiers, we did, I think, regional qualifiers. And once we got to the finalists, we actually started to create some content around those guys. Make sure we could tell their backstory, we could tell what motivates them, etc. A bit like an Olympian. So I think we've got a short video.
This is a great piece of narrative that came out of the competition itself, if it works.
Circling's going at this Nexus, and that is it! GG! Scarlet is the IEM Pyeongchang 2018 champion!
Right from the get-go, Scarlet was extremely impressive, and I was really taken aback by how good she was.
She can beat few good players in here, probably maybe even reach the finals if she's lucky enough.
I think one of the real strengths of Scarlet is that she is unpredictable, but she is very solid across the board.
She's going to have to beat Serral, she's going to have to beat Zest if she wants to win, and then the finals would probably be against SOS. And that's a tough road, but Scarlet definitely has the skill to be able to do it. It's just, will she deliver her top quality games?
Terran has a pretty good position, but with these great blinding clouds, those tanks are basically made useless for the time being. Harpooning one of the tanks into the army, and a great victorious fight there by Scarlet.
She's just diving straight in, absolutely no fear. The corrosive vials landing on the defensive player's army. The drones desperately being pulled in to try and fight, but they are workers. They're not made for battle. They're all falling. Scarlet takes the 3-1 victory.
We can never predict exactly what SOS's chances are. It's what he brings to the table on the day.
If she can take down this gateway, that is huge. It goes down. And that means that this adept should be picked off as well. More circlings dropped off into the main base. GG! Oh, SOS, if only he could stabilize, but Scarlet has kept this aggression on. Circling's going after this Nexus, and that is it! GG! Scarlet is the IEM Pyeongchang 2018 champion!
What's amazing about that is obviously not only was she a female winning this show tournament in a way, but she was a Canadian beating a Korean. Koreans can play StarCraft 2 extremely well. You don't want to try your chances on the Korean StarCraft server. Trust me. So I think the way in which that narrative is developing is super, super crucial in the way that it's obviously serving a very aspirational and inspirational path for many others. Oh dear. I have to just.
Yeah, so as James mentioned, obviously back in June last year, Gregory Bryant, our main guy for the client, stood up on stage at E3 in the PC Gamer Show and sort of formalised this 15-year-old partnership that we've had with ESL. So we've become the global technology partner with ESL, and it's great news. We've done so much work together, but having that formal agreement means that you can continue to grow a lot of the ESL tournaments. You've got ESL One, the fact it's here. You've also got obviously the national championships and also the ESL Pro Leagues and a few more. So, from our point of view, we wanted to make sure that all the competitions, all the players were playing on the latest Intel tech, because obviously that gives extra performance and stuff. But also it's more than that. It's the whole powering esports end to end. So it's not just about the competition players. It's actually what's going on behind the scenes that a lot of the esports fans may not be aware of. All the production stuff, all the the streaming, etc. So all of that stuff is now being powered by Intel Xeon processors and stuff, which is just adding extra sort of performance to the competitions and stuff. I think throughout there are some other announcements as well, which I think James is going to touch upon now.
Yeah, the Intel Grand Slam was a great idea where we actually looked at the fact that around CSGO there was actually multiple tracks now for teams to actually play in, whether it's a circuit like Intel Extreme Masters or an invitational like ESL One or DreamHack and Pro League, which is completely an open qualifier in many respects. And with Intel, we actually announced this 1 million Grand Slam, which was a great idea of saying, well, we're now identifying that, as players and as a sport in many respects, it actually deserves this kind of, again, another narrative of a way to say, if a team can win all 4 of these tournaments within a set period of time, they're just going to get another $1 million in prize money, is just a fantastic way on kind of encouraging that, even on a very high level. Another thing we wanted to touch on, actually, I think you're going to take that.
Yeah, so something else that was announced a while back was this partnership with NEC, which is an organisation which promotes diversity within esports, across the board. So we've run some competitions, at IEM, we've done some world championships, I think we've done for the last 3 years.
Yeah. And also one of as a diversity initiative, obviously it's covering all aspects of diversity, but it's super important. But really, obviously, the biggest issue in esports was that gender gap, which needed to be looked at. And obviously, this is a topic of a big debate, so we won't start it now. But obviously, gaming has traditionally been quite a male activity. But obviously, to try and encourage more females, this was one of the prospects we put in place. And there's been a lot of research done, but also actually finding role models within the industry. And there's a short video that I just wanted to touch on here, if it works. Yep.
I'd say if you look at a lot of the trends of gaming and competitive gaming in esports, a lot of people look at that and they see boys, 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 boys. We don't really care where you're from, what your background is. We don't care what gender you are. We, in fact, encourage people of all localities to come out and hang out with us. There are a lot of places in esports, and esports is growing, and these communities are getting bigger and bigger. Yet a lot of the females who do play find it really difficult to come out. We always make sure that we're reaching out to let them know that there's a safe place on campus to game. When we have our social events and, even when we have our competitive events, I think that leading by example and showing that, there are active women in leadership at Crimson Gaming and in the community, and that they're friendly and they're warm and they want to hang out with you. We started to notice more of an attendance from women at our events.
And this is a picture of the last finals, which Team Dignitas raised the trophy. So that was actually on a big stage at IEM Katowice, and it was viewed. I think there was 20 million views overall. But it was quite interesting, actually, the dynamic of actually whether or not that team should be an all-female team or a mixed team. And it was actually the decision by the actual players themselves to say, right now, we would much prefer an all-female-based tournament, and I'm sure it won't be too long until we start seeing that mixed level play, when that sort of skill level starts to get closer in the professional scene.
Yeah, so one of the other things that we've looked at together was the role of VR within esports. I think it's quite a hot topic at the moment. So as esports grows, so should the experience for the fans as well as the players. So, you know, I think at IEM this year there was actually a dedicated VR stream, which, do we have the stats? 340,000 views within VR, which is insane. So we wanted to, you know, make sure the fans could experience all this esports, the goodness in VR, but we also, you know, started looking at the players. That, you know, we've got some decent games now that are coming out, which could be esports titles in VR, like Lone Echo and a few others like Unspoken. So we actually, again, announced last year this VR league in collaboration with Oculus and ESL. And I think there's been a few rounds of it so far, which is working really well. Again, another video just to show you how that's looking.
Hey guys, it's Blue here. We're behind the scenes at the ESL studio, and I want to take a little bit of time to introduce you to the VR Challenger League. This is the VR Challenger League, the proving ground for up-and-coming competitors in this unique discipline, brought to you by ESL, Oculus, and Intel. Over the course of the next few months, players will face off in Insomniac's The Unspoken and Ready at Dawn's Echo Arena to prove they are the best at VR esports and to take home their share of over $200,000 in prizing. It all starts online with the ESL Play platform. Find your opponents, defeat them, and earn points to qualify for regional events in both titles. At Oculus Connect and ESL Hamburg, Echo Arena teams will compete for points, prizing, and direct qualification to the Grand Finals in 2018. The Unspoken will summon competitors to the Intel Extreme Masters Oakland in the USA and DreamHack Winter in Sweden to determine the best of the best in this spell-slinging VR duel. In 2018, our top 4 ranked contenders from each competitive region will face off in the final battle for the title of the first ever VR Challenger League champion and a share of the $200,000 prize pool. Sign up online now at ESL Play to start earning points for the next offline event in your region and towards the grand finals.
It's always a chicken and egg situation with many technologies as they come into play, because obviously, you know, as you're driving technology such as VR, you also need the content to go with it, and then the player base and the viewership, etc. So it really does take that partnership and that drive from both parties and from multiple sides in this case to actually really drive that forwards. And when we start seeing that growth in the numbers, that's the really exciting aspect, because obviously we're seeing the hardware starting to come down in price, the barrier to entry getting lower. I mean, this is certainly a future that everyone has their sights on, and a very exciting prospect. And obviously this is the angle we've taken to approach that.
So yeah, changing sort of gears slightly. So at Intel Extreme Masters Finals this year, we actually, for the first time, worked with ESL on bringing this global esports forum to the event. The idea here was to try to bring the industry together, a little bit like what we're trying to do today, and sort of get a lot of panel discussions, keynotes, deeper dive sessions, because we can't just do it on our own. We need help from our partners, we need help from the industry overall. So it was a day full of, like I say, panels and all that sort of stuff around trying to figure out how to unleash the next, I think it's like billion esports fans and players. So I think there was, I think some of you guys might even went, right? So I think there were some common themes throughout. The diversity topic came up, but also around better internet access, you know, the different types of esports tournaments, the leagues, etc., etc. So I think it was a great example of how, you know, we're trying to get advice, insights, but also provide insights and advice to you guys as well.
And of course, I can't go without mentioning the National League, a massive passion project for all of the offices around the world who run a National League locally. And really just to touch on why we do that. And it's basically that step closer to the community. It's a platform that the community can really use to actually step up their game. So we've already seen several players go through our National League, coming from the community into a more now professional environment, or semi-pro environment, sometimes we call it, over multiple titles, and they're then being promoted into the higher leagues on an international or European level. And we've already had some amazing success, such as Max Law and Alfari and teams like Misfits, etc. And that path to pro is like a super important narrative as well, in terms of providing that inspiration for others. But it doesn't stop with just the players, of course. It's actually a platform for the talent and also the people working behind the scenes to actually really find their skills. I mean, one of the questions Heather had earlier on was, how does the community step up and get involved and actually look at the professional side of what esports is developing? Well, this is just an example of a platform that, again, with Intel, we can really, create that opportunity. And even though that I mentioned the German National League, which started in 2002, so they've had a pretty long head start, 12-year head start when we started this. We've actually caught up in viewership, and we hope to surpass the German League this year, which is very exciting. And obviously we've taken it now to EGX, and Mark will touch on that in a second. But, great example, Caroline there. She came from our BizDev team. She's used the Premiership as a platform to start launching her hosting career. And many others. Ezio, a player who is now casting analysis. We've got Kat Evans in the office, who produced her first show. Straight out of uni. She's a year out of university, and she produced a Premiership show. So in effect, it is a bit of a guinea pig project, but really that's the nature of the community. That's the nature in which esports grows in its entirety. So extremely important factor within the ecosystem. Video.
So hands up, who went to EGX last year? Good number. How many people recognise that stand? Good number. Good. So that was just an example. I'll say an example. That is what we did at EGX. So when the global announcement came out in June, I think we were quite quickly on the phone to each other going, right, we need to do something this year. We need to do something big. What's coming up? Right, EGX. Right, what can we do at EGX? It's the largest gaming show in the UK. We wanted to do something to showcase esports in the UK, but also bring experiences for the community, the industry, etc., etc. So I think we took over around 5,000 square meters. Yeah. We had two big stages. We had our main Twitch stage. We had the ESL Premiership stage where they had the finals of CS:GO, League of Legends. Plus, I think there was a Rainbow Six Invitational, which worked really well. It's now part of the Premiership, right? So that worked incredibly well. But we made sure that it was called the ESL Arena, so we made sure that it was kind of a hub for esports at EGX. So we brought in a lot of your partners, I can see some of them here, to again create experiences for the community. So ASUS, for example, had a PC building workshop. I don't think EGX ever had that kind of element before. From an Intel point of view, you saw we had a large stand, a lot of demos. I think we even had Fortnite Battle Royale on our stand before it was popular, which is insane. But we brought VR experiences, influencers. But we had the Intel Treasure Hunt, which worked incredibly well for the community because, for us, I should say, because we handed out lanyards, they could go around partners and stuff, but it actually gave us an opportunity to talk to them. Because this was the first gaming event for me personally, but I think for Intel to go to directly for a long time, so it allowed us to get back out in front of the community, talk to these guys, get a few insights and stuff, and we've got some plans for this year, which I'm sure we'll share at some point, just to keep this momentum going.
And one final video, I promise.
Well, I'll introduce this one. So this is a bit of a curveball. One thing that is a real hot topic at the moment is just data, just across the board. You know, everyone's talking about data and how you analyse it and all that sort of stuff. And esports is no exception to that. Me and James sat down yesterday, and he was, I don't know if you can share some of this sort of stuff, but talking about some of the stuff you're doing with some universities around data analytics and data capture within esports. So I don't know if you want to just quickly
I
share.
think it's really interesting, again, looking at what the opportunity provides. We look at the sports industry, and obviously that also relies a lot on data for the education, and the video would touch on that as well. But working with university, and you talked to Florian's here from York University today, to get their hands on amazing data that's very accurate and with a context behind it. When you're talking about a big esports tournament with millions of people watching and amazing perfect data coming out of a game server or a game and different players and teams, etc., that's very exciting, and a lot can be done with that. So working with the universities and just basically providing access, there's a huge opportunity to actually really delve into what is going to be the future of esports in terms of a narrative, integrity levels, looking at different aspects of analysis or talent discovery, etc. And I think that's one, for me, that's very exciting, because it just shows that we can almost surpass traditional sports in some respect, just based on the data and the technology behind what esports presents.
So this is a short video that I think, James, you were interviewed for about a month ago,
Yes,
right?
Sorry about this. We're taking the data from live games and live tournaments, in a log format, and we're actually starting to process that. We can compare it with a huge subset of data from hundreds of different tournaments and play for individual players and teams. So not only are we presenting live statistics, etc., on screen in graphical form, which is a huge benefit to the millions of people watching, but also it helps the casters build a narrative, and that's obviously hugely entertaining.
The American sniper saves them, and that's an ace in one round!
In terms of recording our data and how we want to progress things, maybe something like Elgato or AV Media, because that way instead of just autopiloting playing against other players and see how we progress from there and how to improve, we can actually record our scrims, our matches, even our tournaments, just to see how to push from there. But I think in the future, it won't just be kills to deaths or anything like that, but the bullets dealt, the heat maps where people stand the most, so try and get more into the players' heads mentality-wise, rather than actually how we do things now.
I think with esports we'll start seeing a lot of synergies. Some of the amazing data capture you can get just from bodies moving within a venue is incredible. And then the spending habits and the way in which we monetize esports. It's incredible to see some of the partnerships that are forming and how that will really manipulate and change and develop that industry, which will, I think, be an example to a lot more of the operators in this space.
It's got to be done.
And just to finish, really, we're talking about the future of esports and how do we encapsulate that? Because I think for a lot of people, especially coming into this industry without that previous knowledge, there's the number of stakeholders in the esports industry is just incredible. So we talk about diversification for a start. Back in the day, it was PC gaming, it was particular technology, it was certain platforms for actually distributing content, but that really is changing. We saw examples of the VR stuff. We've had conversations around mobile earlier today. We're talking about the multiple different platforms, how the broadcast aspects developing, the data aspects, and I think that's really exciting from our perspective.
Yeah, I think you're going to see, if you take the example of the NBA 2K stuff, that's a traditional sports league and stuff. They've got behind esports, they've created their own esports league and all that sort of stuff. I just see that continuing. You probably have some more insider knowledge than I do, but I think just different ways of engaging with the community, different sort of different organisations coming in, a lot more non-endemic, more endemic sponsors and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just, we sort of sum this up in one line, it's just more of everything. It's just
just more.
Just more.
And the aspirational side of things, obviously, we touched on that in terms of the way that the industry is growing in its entirety. And that the panel previously was absolutely fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that, because what really comes across is the fact that it's a real level playing field, very open to anyone to do anything. It's just about just doing it, as Chris said. And I think that really defines, that's what the future of esports is, because there's no limit. Literally, as more stakeholders are coming in, and obviously there is a lot more funding coming into the industry, a lot of VC, etc. That just helps build and create and actually empower the community effectively to step up, and as the industry matures, more and more opportunity around that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The other thing we talked about was recognition. I think the last panel, I think John summed it up quite well. We started, and someone else said the other day, esports started global before it was local. So I think what we're trying to do via the Premiership and some of the grassroots stuff with the ESL play is to make sure that, we've got the grassroots coming up, so the esports talent coming up via the ranks, but also make sure the UK esports scene is recognised on a global level. That's definitely something I'm trying to do internally in Intel. Every meeting I have, they've got Intel Extreme Masters, global, blah, blah. Yeah, but don't forget, the champions, the national championship, what we can do there, because you've got a larger player base there. We need to engage with those guys. We need to do more with those guys and give them the opportunities to, aspire to one day to be in Poland competing on the world final.
And we'll leave you with this. I'll let you into a little secret. ESL and HQ were not a fan of ESL Birmingham. The event was actually coined to happen in Manila. It didn't happen there for lots of different reasons. And obviously from a UK perspective, we put our hands up and said, we think we've got a perfect idea. We worked very closely with the NEC to find this venue and figure out how we could utilise it. And everyone was saying in Germany and around other offices in the world, this is suicide. What are we doing? Not only have we picked Dota 2, which isn't the most popular game in the UK, but it's in the UK. And I mean, one thing we did obviously have on our side was the fact it was the first major, which is exciting. But to actually then see the launch and, the city got very involved. Andy Street, the mayor of West Midlands, was quoted in the press release. And really, we had a pledge. We said to the community, if you make this work, we'll come back. And lo and behold, it's the fastest selling Dota 2 event in ESL history, which is absolutely incredible. And just over 24 hours, the tickets were sold out, to the point where we had to try and figure out how we could reconfigure the stadium in there in order to actually allow for some more seating. So I think this weekend is going to be absolutely magic. ESL couldn't have done it without Intel, of course, and the other sponsors and partners involved, and obviously the community as a whole. So thanks very much, and I hope you really enjoy the event if you're coming.
Thank you. James, sit down. We got some questions, so I'm going to act as moderator now. So thanks to everyone that's put their questions in Slido. So I'm going to put James on the spot a little bit, because there's a couple directed at you, and maybe you can do the same for me as well. One of the questions that came in was, how do you handle anti-cheat in online qualifiers, and how confident are you that you managed to weed out the cheaters before the offline events take place?
It's great question. First of all, from a tournament operation side of things, cheating happens more on a match-fixing side of things, or potential drug abuse, such as Adderall, for example. We don't, fortunately, have any evidence of that, which is good, but there's certainly the aspect of actually trying to avoid that. And we started, we subscribed to an agency called ESIC, which is an Integrity Coalition, actually look at that. But when it comes down to anti-cheat, from a tournament side, what we're trying to do is just identify the player. As long as that player is what he says he is, or where he's from, etc., or she, that's a good thing. But obviously then working with the game developer themselves, they have a really tough job in order to making sure there's no cheating. There are wall bots, etc. I mean, there's an amazing example where someone figured out they could, as these technologies advance, they actually could take a computer mouse and put a cheat on the little processor inside the mouse. So it's almost undetectable by any software that was available, and it had to be discovered and almost outed by the community themselves. And obviously since then it's a bit like hacking. It's a constant battle with the potential abuses within the games. Now I would just touch on one other thing there, is that sometimes a game will have a glitch and it can be taken advantage of. And it's actually quite interesting from a tournament operator how you cope with that, because if a team kind of takes advantage of that glitch, it's not necessarily cheating, it's just a little bug in the game. So we actually have to put in the rule set that either we can't play on that map, or you can't use that character, or a combination of the two. And if they were to be seen to use that glitch, how do we deal with it? And actually, interestingly, we've had some examples in the past where a team has taken advantage of a little-known bug, and the community reacted extremely interestingly. They actually ousted the team themselves, and the next time that team appeared at a big event, they were literally booed off stage almost, which is quite incredible. So obviously, from a community perspective again, it's really about trying to self-regulate. We're trying to keep this a special thing, and I think there's always examples of that.
Cool. So another question is more directed to myself. So as a tech partner of ESL, how are you using the data you receive to develop Intel's strategy and give back to the community? So there's probably sort of two answers to this. So one is, as esports grows... Sorry, James. Thanks. Pick a good one. As esports grows, obviously there's more money into esports, more money goes into the publishers. So this is kind of this cycle. Because Intel's always wanting to make sure that we give the best performance to the gamers, etc., etc. So what we see is, as the more money goes in, more players are playing games, so the ISVs develop, etc. So what we try to do is work with all of those partners, with the ISVs, to make sure the games run best on Intel. So how that's impacted our strategy is that we are working a lot with those guys to make sure that the products that we release and we innovate, etc., can keep up with the demands of the gamers. The other answer is around the actual community itself. So what we're trying to do, and again, first panel was amazing, probably explain it better than I can, but it's about putting a real voice to a big corporation like Intel. So what we're trying to do specifically in the UK is try to make the Intel UK kind of social channels engage with the audience a lot more, because that's what we're hearing. We're hearing the feedback from, we talk to the ESL guys quite a lot, but also a lot of the community themselves when we go to events like EGX is, you're big Intel. Put a face to it. So we're trying to be a bit more engaging with the community. So, over this year, we've got a new social strategy. We're going to engage more on Twitter. We're going to engage more on Facebook and all that sort of stuff, just to have those conversations so we can get that feedback loop in place and stuff.
Some really good questions on here, actually. There's actually a couple I'm going to combine. Question about will IEM always be in Poland, and also why we chose India as a region for a national league. And I think what we're touching on there is two things around the geographical aspect of esports, because as we identified, top-down approach again, it started out online, it was international from day one. So what does it mean to actually have a geographical location for an event? And really it's about the fact that, first of all, the primary reason we're here doing an event in an arena is to create a social event, but the stream online, it's the millions of people who'll be watching it over the weekend and seeing their favourite team win or lose. But that social aspect creates that atmosphere, creates the magic. It's very much part of the narrative. So as it forms, we kind of look to keep those events in that location on that date for the significant future. And in a way, for ESL, that's part of our intellectual property. It's basically saying ESL One Birmingham is going to be here forever. That's what we'd like to see, and the same for Poland. But I think there's a lot of space then to continue adding events globally. I think things will move around, but the general mainstay is to actually choose a location and stay there, which is obviously really exciting. And with India, what that presented was obviously the cultural difference between the way people play games. There's millions and millions of people playing games in India, but obviously a lot more are playing on mobile platforms, for example, or lower powered PCs, which means that will actually have a significant play on what the games are being played and the way in which they meet up. But you look at some of the events that happen out there, it's very similar. There's cosplayers. I mean, Indian cosplay is absolutely incredible. They like the passion they put in to actually costume is almost next level. And obviously the passion behind the play is incredible too, and the viewership is crazy. So I think that's the kind of answer from a geographical perspective, but in reality, it doesn't matter where esports goes. It can be anywhere. No one heard of Katowice, Odense. How many people heard of Odense before ESL Pro League? It's amazing to see, and I think that's a really exciting aspect of esports as well.
Cool. So I've had the nod from Caroline, so we're out of time. So if we didn't answer your questions, come and find us afterwards, and I'm sure we can have that conversation. So thanks very much.